Welcome back. We're digging into menopause, mental health, inflammation, nutrition, and why women keep getting dismissed.
And the wild part is how much of this is treatable if people actually took it seriously.
The funding gap alone is insane because menopause gets treated like a side quest.
15 million for menopause research against 15 billion for women's health overall?
And most of the big pile goes to making people pregnant, not helping them after.
That is such a brutal framing. Like your value expires when fertility does.
Exactly, and that mindset has shaped medicine for decades.
What hit me hardest was how many women walk in asking for help and leave with nothing.
Most of them are told it's stress, aging, or in their head.
Which is medical speak for, please go bother somebody else.
Basically, and then the woman goes home and thinks she's losing her mind.
The mental health piece feels huge because it is not just hot flashes.
It can worsen depression, anxiety, ADHD, even bipolar symptoms.
Wait, estrogen drop can hit cognition that hard?
It can, and sometimes an SSRI that used to work just stops working the same way.
So the woman's suffering changes, and the old prescription just sits there like a relic.
That's why she talks about hormones as an adjunctive tool, not a magic wand.
The inflammation explanation actually made a lot of sense to me.
Estrogen acts like an anti-inflammatory buffer, so when it drops, chronic inflammation rises.
So menopause is basically the body losing its protective blanket and then acting surprised.
That is actually a pretty good way to put it.
And then the nutrition advice is not sexy, but it is brutally practical.
Fiber, vitamin D, enough protein, and fewer added sugars.
12 grams of fiber a day on average is embarrassing.
The minimum should be closer to 25, and many women are nowhere near that.
People think fiber is some wellness influencer trick, and meanwhile it's just basic survival.
It affects glucose absorption, the gut microbiome, and even downstream brain and heart health.
The gut microbiome part always feels like medicine discovering an entire hidden city.
It really is, and that's why food is first in her toolkit.
I did like that she wasn't turning everything into supplements for clicks.
Right, she kept saying nutrition comes before hormones.
But she also made a strong case for hormone therapy when it's appropriate.
Especially because the Women's Health Initiative was interpreted in a way that terrified everyone.
That study basically became medical folklore faster than it became science.
And the absolute versus relative risk detail matters a lot there.
Like 1 extra case per 1,000, but people heard estrogen causes cancer and ran with it.
Exactly, and the estrogen-only arm looked different from the estrogen-progestin arm.
Because the uterus changes the whole equation, right?
Right. If you have a uterus, you need progesterone protection with systemic estrogen.
Human bodies stay committed to being annoyingly complicated.
Annoyingly complicated is the medical motto, honestly.
What I found wild was that vaginal estrogen is safe even for a lot of breast cancer survivors.
And yet so many women with painful sex and recurrent UTIs never get offered it.
That feels like the definition of preventable suffering.
It is because genitourinary symptoms of menopause are massively undertreated.
I liked the distinction between local and systemic therapy.
It matters because a cream in the vagina is not the same as treating the whole body.
Patches, gels, rings, pills, pellets, it's a whole menu.
And rote matters because oral estrogen goes through the liver first.
Which is where clotting risk becomes a bigger issue.
Exactly, which is why non-oral forms are often preferred for some women.
The testosterone conversation was interesting too because libido is not one simple switch.
She broke it into relationship issues, arousal issues, orgasm issues, and desire issues.
That's actually the first time I have heard sex talk organized like an operating manual.
Which is probably why it is more useful than the usual vague advice.
And the desire bucket is where testosterone can sometimes help.
Yes, especially when the relationship is good, but initiation and interest have faded.
The gap there seems huge, though, because there is no FDA-approved testosterone option for women.
That's part of the larger problem because the evidence and the prescribing reality do not line up neatly.
So women are expected to suffer elegantly while the system catches up 15 years later.
Suffer elegantly is exactly the phrase medical culture seems to prefer.
I keep thinking about the muscle mass part, because that feels less talked about than mood or hot flashes.
But it may be one of the most important outcomes because muscle protects metabolism and function.
Losing 10 to 15% of muscle in the first decade is no joke.
And it links directly to insulin resistance, falls, and bone health.
So muscle is not just aesthetic, it is basically insurance.
Exactly, and once you lose that system, osteoporosis risk jumps.
Half of women having an osteoporotic fracture before death is staggering.
Especially since a hip fracture can be life-changing or fatal.
And people still treat strength training like an optional hobby.
She really made resistance training sound like medicine, not fitness content.
Creatine was the one supplement I did not expect to come up so strongly.
But the data with weightlifting and creatine in older women is pretty compelling.
So the answer is not more doom scrolling, it's more dumbbells.
Honestly, yes, and maybe a grocery cart full of fiber too.
The fasting section also surprised me because she was careful, not evangelical.
She liked it for inflammation and insulin, not as a universal weight loss hack.
Which is refreshing because people act like skipping breakfast is a personality now.
Some people really do turn every eating pattern into a religion.
I appreciated the evolutionary angle, though, because it actually made sense.
A focused brain in a fed scarcity environment would have been useful for survival.
Ancient humans were not out there doing 3 meals and a dessert.
No, they were probably just trying to get through the day alive.
The bigger theme for me is that menopause is not an ending. It is a medical transition.
And if medicine treated it like one, millions of women would be helped earlier.
Instead, too many women get told to wait it out until things get worse.
Which is backwards, because the best time to intervene is often earlier in perimenopause.
That early window seems to matter for mood, bones, heart, everything.
It really does, and the prevention angle is what gets overlooked.
This episode made menopause feel less mysterious and more like a systems problem.
And systems problems need systems-level attention, not dismissal.
That's the least glamorous conclusion and somehow the most useful one.
Exactly, and that's where we are today.
Next episode should get even more practical because I want the decision tree stuff.
And we'll get into what women can actually ask for without apologizing.
Perfect, because the apology tax on women is already too high.
We'll pick this up there and go deeper into the treatment playbook.
Welcome back, because this one gets very real very fast.
We are talking about why menopause is a health system blind spot and what actually helps.
And the wild part is how much damage comes from people just not knowing the basics.
The funding gap alone is ridiculous, and it tells you everything.
15 million for menopause and billions for fertility is such a message.
It says women matter most when they are trying to get pregnant.
That is a brutal way to structure medical priorities.
Especially when about 1 billion women are in this transition or close to it.
1.2 billion by the end of the year, right?
Yes, and 47 million more enter that category every year.
Wait, and most of them are still getting brushed off?
About 85% walk in asking for help and leave with more questions.
That is not care, that is a dismissal ritual.
That is a very generous name for it, honestly.
And the hormone therapy fear is still hanging around from that old study?
The Women's Health Initiative was misunderstood and then repeated badly for years.
The absolute versus relative risk thing is where everybody got played.
Exactly, because the actual increase was tiny, but the headline was explosive.
1 extra case per 1,000 somehow became the apocalypse.
That is media math at its finest.
And the biggest mistake was age, right?
Yes, the average participant was 63, which is not when most women start therapy.
So people then generalized that late-stage data to women in perimenopause.
They did, and it scared women away from a treatment that could help them.
I keep coming back to the mental health piece because that feels huge.
It is huge, because depression, anxiety, ADHD symptoms, all of it can worsen.
So somebody can be stable on an SSRI and then suddenly it stops being enough?
Yes, and sometimes the answer is adjusting treatment, not pretending nothing changed.
That is such a different model than just handing people one pill forever.
Menopause is not one symptom, so one tool rarely fixes everything.
And inflammation seems like the connective tissue here.
Estrogen is anti-inflammatory, so when it drops, the body loses protection.
Which means the body is not just aging, it is aging faster.
In a lot of ways, yes, especially when sleep, mood, and metabolism all get hit.
So what do you actually do first if you want to lower inflammation?
Start with food quality, fiber, protein, vitamin D, and not chasing extremes.
The fiber obsession has become a full cultural event now.
It has, and honestly, it deserves the hype.
People used to act like protein was the only adult nutrient.
Protein matters, but fiber is doing a lot more than people realize.
Like gut health, glucose control, all that?
Yes, soluble fiber feeds the microbiome and helps slow glucose absorption.
So the crunchier the food, the more your body is quietly applauding.
That is not medically precise, but emotionally, yes.
And vitamin D is showing up everywhere in this conversation.
It is, because deficiency is common and it affects bones, mood, and disease risk.
85% of patients being deficient is bonkers.
It is, and it is one of the first things many clinicians should check.
Then fasting enters the chat, which always gets people weirdly intense.
Because fasting sounds like a religion if you say it too loudly.
It really does. And then everyone starts fighting at brunch.
The useful framing is that fasting can help inflammation and insulin, not that it is magic.
And not for everyone, especially if it triggers disordered eating.
Exactly, and that caution matters more than the trendiness.
The 16:8 version sounds almost deceptively simple.
Simple on paper, yes, and adaptation is the real trick.
Basically, your body needs onboarding, not a surprise memo.
That is exactly right.
I also like the evolutionary argument, even if people over-romanticize it.
Sure, but the bigger point is that constant feeding is not some sacred law.
And ketones versus glucose becomes a whole fuel conversation.
Right, and the brain can sometimes function very well in a fasted state.
So hunger is not always your body being betrayed by civilization.
Sometimes it is just your body switching modes.
What really surprised me was how central muscle mass is here.
It is central because menopause can accelerate muscle loss fast.
10 to 15% in the first decade is not a small thing.
No, because muscle affects insulin sensitivity, fall recovery, and bone health.
So when people talk about menopause as a weight issue, they are missing the real issue.
They are missing strength, function, and long-term risk.
And 50% of women having an osteoporotic fracture is terrifying.
It is terrifying, and a lot of it is preventable with the right interventions.
Hormones, resistance training, protein, vitamin D, creatine.
Yes, and when you stack those correctly, the effect is much bigger.
Creatine feels like one of those things that gets dismissed until the data gets too loud.
That is a very polite way to say people were late to the party.
Then there is the vaginal estrogen conversation, which people are weirdly afraid of.
Even though local estrogen is one of the safest and most effective tools available.
And it helps with recurrent UTIs, dryness, painful sex, the whole thing.
Yes, and that syndrome gets missed constantly because people still think menopause is just hot flashes.
Hot flashes got all the branding and everything else got ignored.
That is exactly the problem.
The system still treats sexual wellness like an optional luxury.
When for many women it is part of basic quality of life.
And even then, there are multiple routes for estrogen, not just one.
Right, patches, gels, creams, pills, rings, pellets, but the route matters.
Oral estrogen going through the liver changes the risk profile a lot.
It can raise clotting factors, which is why non-oral options matter for many women.
So the fear is not irrational, but the solution is not avoidance.
Exactly, it is matching the right form to the right patient.
And then you get into side effects, which every real treatment has.
Headaches, migraines, bleeding, skin reactions, all of that gets monitored.
Medicine loves pretending side effects are moral failures.
That is such a good line and also deeply true.
I liked the approach of starting with the patient's story first.
Because symptoms overlap with thyroid issues, autoimmune disease, and other diagnoses.
So good care is not just prescribing, it is differential diagnosis.
Exactly, and then you can start treating immediately instead of making her wait.
The sexual function framework was also really sharp.
Relationship issues, arousal issues, orgasm issues, and desire issues are different problems.
Which is painfully obvious once someone says it, but nobody says it.
Right, and if it is desire, testosterone may help some women.
And there is still no FDA-approved testosterone option for women?
Not in the United States, which is part of why access gets so messy.
That feels like the whole story in one sentence.
Missing tools, missing training, missing urgency.
And women are left translating their own symptoms like amateur detectives.
Exactly, and that should not be normal.
All right, that is a lot. And somehow it still feels like the surface.
It is the surface because the real treatment playbook is still coming.
Good, because the current playbook sounds like it was written by people who lost the plot.
That is exactly where we will pick up next.
Perfect, because we need the practical version, not the panic version.
And next time we get into what women can actually ask for in real life.
Episode 3 is where this gets useful in the most direct way.
And we will make it very concrete. Welcome back, because this episode is the messy part where medicine finally admits the gap.
And the gap is gigantic, not some little missing footnote.
It is gigantic, because menopause gets treated like a niche complaint instead of a major health transition.
$15 million for menopause research is insulting on its face.
Especially when women's health money mostly goes to fertility and pregnancy.
So we fund getting women pregnant, then ignore them when they are not convenient anymore.
That is the brutal summary, yes.
And the wild part is how many women this actually hits at once.
About 1.2 billion women by the end of the year, with millions entering it every year.
That is not a side issue, that is a planet-scale issue.
Exactly, and yet most women still walk into appointments and leave with nothing.
That 85% getting dismissed number is infuriating.
And only a tiny fraction even get a conversation about hormone therapy.
Which is insane because the fear is often based on bad framing, not actual risk.
The Women's Health Initiative created that fear, especially around breast cancer.
But the whole story is way more specific than the headlines made it sound.
Very specific, because the scary result came from the estrogen plus progestin arm in older women.
Headlines love one giant villain and a dramatic press conference.
The absolute risk increase was tiny, but the relative risk got weaponized.
Relative risk is basically how to terrify the entire population with math.
That is a little unfair to math, but yes, that is what happened.
And the estrogen-only arm looked completely different, right?
Yes, it did not show the same breast cancer signal and actually looked more protective in some ways.
So the public basically heard one half of a two-part story and built a panic off that.
That is exactly what happened, and women have paid for it ever since.
That is such a classic medicine problem, though.
It is, and the cost is not abstract because it changes treatment for decades.
What I found fascinating was the mental health piece, because people still act like hormones are only about hot flashes.
But mood, anxiety, depression, even worsening bipolar symptoms can all shift in menopause.
So someone can be stable for years and then suddenly feel like their antidepressant stopped working.
Exactly, and sometimes they need a dose change or hormone support as an adjunct.
I like that she was careful not to say estrogen is the primary antidepressant.
Right, because the point is support, not magic replacement for everything.
The internet would absolutely turn that into estrogen solves sadness.
And then spend 6 months arguing in the comments.
The inflammation explanation was also so clean.
Estrogen is anti-inflammatory, so when it drops, that protective effect drops too.
So menopause is not just a hormone dip, it is kind of a systems-wide shift.
Yes, brain, heart, bones, muscles, mood, everything gets touched.
And then nutrition becomes the obvious lever people keep skipping.
Exactly, because she keeps pushing fiber, vitamin D, magnesium, and protein for a reason.
Fiber has become the most underrated celebrity in health conversations.
It really has, and most women are barely getting half of what they need.
The gut microbiome angle is where this gets kind of mind-bending.
Because soluble fiber feeds the microbiome, and that affects inflammation and even cardiovascular risk.
So the crunchy salad is not just being annoying, it is actually doing work.
Yes, the crunchy salad is employed.
Finally, a green vegetable with a performance review.
And vitamin D matters too, because deficiency is extremely common in this group.
I keep hearing vitamin D quietly show up in every major conversation now.
It is doing more than people think, from bone health to brain receptors to chronic disease risk.
Which makes the prevention angle feel almost offensively simple.
It is simple in theory, but the system does not teach women to look at it that way.
Then fasting comes in, and that part is tricky because people get religious about it.
She was careful about that too, because fasting helps some people and hurts others.
And it is not some universal fat loss hack which people want it to be.
The better evidence is around inflammation and insulin reduction, not miracle weight loss.
The 16-8 idea felt very practical, though.
Yes, because she framed it like adaptation, not punishment.
Which is rare, because most diet advice sounds like a threat from a substitute teacher.
That is painfully accurate.
The muscle mass part might be the most serious thing here, honestly.
It is, because menopause accelerates muscle loss, and that affects insulin resistance and fall recovery.
10 to 15% in the first decade is not small at all.
And less muscle means more osteoporosis risk, which becomes devastating later.
That fracture statistic was brutal, especially the hip fracture mortality piece.
It is why resistance training and protein are not optional in this conversation.
Yet people still think bone health is a calcium commercial from 2004.
Yes, and the real playbook is far more complete than that.
Creatine was another one that surprised me because people still treat it like a gym bro supplement.
The data she referenced suggests real strength and muscle gains in older and menopausal women.
So the gym bro supplement may have been robbed of its best audience.
Possibly, and women have been underserved by that entire category of research.
The hormone delivery options were also way more nuanced than people realize.
Yes, patches, gels, creams, rings, pills, pellets, and each has trade-offs.
And oral estrogen going through the liver explains why the clot concern is not random fear-mongering.
Exactly, that is why non-oral forms are often preferred when clot risk is a concern.
The vaginal estrogen discussion was huge too, because it sounds almost too local to matter.
But it matters a lot for genitourinary syndrome, recurrent UTIs, dryness, and painful intercourse.
And it is safe even for many women with breast cancer, which is huge.
Yes, and yet women are still denied it because the old fear has not fully died.
That is the part that feels the most heartbreaking to me.
Because the suffering is so preventable, and the treatment is often straightforward.
I also liked how she starts with story first instead of just bulldozing into labs.
That is good medicine, because symptoms can mimic thyroid disease, autoimmune issues, and more.
Basically, the body loves disguising itself as a completely different problem.
It really does, and that is why careful evaluation matters.
The sexual wellness piece was refreshingly direct too, because people are absurdly shy about it.
She broke it into relationship issues, arousal, orgasm, and desire, which is actually useful.
Most conversations just skip to awkward silence and then the phrase low libido.
And that is not a treatment plan.
The desire issue is interesting because it is not always about attraction, it is about chemistry.
Exactly, and testosterone can help some women, even though there is no FDA-approved female option in the U.S.
That feels like a regulatory hole, not a medical one.
A lot of it is both, but yes, women often end up in a gray zone.
I keep coming back to the same thing. This is not one symptom. It is a whole life quality problem.
That is the core of it, because the goal is longer life and better life, not just fewer hot flashes.
And that is such a more intelligent goal than just chasing symptom whack-a-mole.
Yes, and way less frustrating for women who are already exhausted.
Okay, we should leave people with that because episode 3 needs to get very practical.
Exactly, because next we get into what women can actually ask for in the room.
And hopefully, what to do when the room acts like it forgot how to be helpful.
That is the perfect setup, and we will make it concrete.
All right, let's do the helpful version next time.
Coming up in episode 3, the exact questions, options, and red flags women should know.